Welcome back to Transaction Care. It's my first live I've done in a while. My name is Lillian Hernandez, aka Lily like the flower. And welcome. If you're watching this, it's been a while. I just wanted to come on here and check in and let you all know. Well, first of all, let me get my hair right. Let you all know. Oh, it's inverted, so I'm like fixing the wrong side. Look at all these gray hairs. But just let you all know what I've been up to, what's going on with the Transaction Care podcast, my coaching business, transaction coordination in general, the real estate market. But if you do have any questions, just drop them in the chat. I'll be glad to answer them here on this live. But until then, this is simply just a check-in on my behalf since I haven't released a new episode of the podcast in a while. I also haven't uploaded here on YouTube. And the reason for that is honestly, I've just been taking my time. I've been working on other things outside of real estate that are fun for me. Not to say real estate isn't fun, but we all know that when you're getting paid to do something, there's just a lot more pressure added to that lifestyle and how you approach it. And I'm working on that as well to make sure that I don't get too caught up in the pressures of that life. And last year was one of my toughest years, and now we're in March. I really just want to go about this year in the best way possible for me and my business, and even simply just my mental health. So when it comes to the podcast, I definitely am still going to be posting. Last year, I did 50 episodes. I only took 2 weeks off. I was either batch recording them or doing multiple interviews in 1 week, or recording, honestly, just recording hours before my release time. So I put a lot of pressure on myself to show up for the podcast. And don't get me wrong, I loved it. I think the 52 episodes that are currently on there hold so much value that can pretty much keep you all occupied in the meantime while I'm revamping and re-strategizing how I want to approach the podcast in this next season. The 2 episodes that I did release this year are great. I talked about what I would do if I started over. And what was the other one? I think I talked about quitting, but basically, yeah, what to do before you quit your job. And it's gotten me thinking a lot about, my coaching business. And, there's a lot of, much like content creation or even, business building, it's like, what niche, what market do I want to cater to? Who am I speaking to? And that's probably been the toughest part of me running any business, is simply figuring out who is my target audience, because I have the TC business, I have the podcast, I have coaching, and then I have these personal projects that I'm working on in the background that all require or are directed at different people. So I'm doing my best to not overextend myself. And last year being one of my toughest years financially, I had to come back to the basics and really scale back, look at my expensive, be honest with myself, humble myself, have some humility, and really just tackle my budget and what are my savings goals? What debts do I have? What investments do I want to make in the future? How are the investments? A lot of soul searching, if you will. And because I have my hands in a few different things, I had to determine, okay, what do I really want to commit to in the first quarter of the year? And that was essentially podcasting, YouTube, and coaching, really, truly. And I have done that. The YouTube part is just developing in the background on a different channel. I'll talk more about that later. But ultimately, when it comes to transaction care, it's still early in the game. Don't get me wrong, because the topics I want to talk about are a lot heavier than they were last year. So I think that's why I'm not rushing to just put them out for the sake of putting an episode out. I really want to take my time when it comes to the production of it. Not just like the lighting or the sound, but the messaging is what I mean. And the topics that I want to talk about, again, like I said, are a lot more serious than and they go way beyond just transaction coordination. Because keep in mind, my goal with the podcast is to demystify the business of real estate. And yes, I happen to be a transaction coordinator, but that's not what this show is all about. But the strategy in the beginning was to start with, let me just talk to, was my mic too far? Let me just talk to the audience that I know, that know me, or can at least relate to me the most right now. And that is, or that's transaction coordinators. That's the community that I should talk to first. And so a part of, building up my podcast was, let me reach the people closest to me first, right? And that was probably the best thing I could have ever done, not just for the show or business, but for me. Building community, when you're building a business, it's so important to put yourself out there, have conversations, whether it's professional, personal, or a mix of both, ethically, legally, all of that stuff. That can go a long way. Having a network of people that you can rely on, or at least reference, support, give them referrals, give them business, give them shout outs. Shout out to Ashley Brennan of the TC Social Club. She just made a post today of top 6 podcasts for TCs, and I was number 1 on that list, and I was just so honored because I've kind of been sitting here debating on how I want to approach the podcast, what I want to talk about. Are these topics too serious, too soon? Do I want to tackle this alone? Do I still want to bring on guests? Just the standard self-doubt, insecurities, imposter syndromes that occur in most of our lives, right? So that, if anything, inspired me to come on here on live and post something and talk to you all and tell you what's going on. That way you're not kind of left in the dark. And again, thank you, Ashley, for that. I appreciate you. Go follow TC Social, the TC Social Club, and the real estate assistant, Ashley Brennan. She's based out of Austin, Texas, and I think she's doing really awesome things for the community and the real estate industry in general. So yeah, so I've been going through a lot of just emotional, mental changes. I'm also 39 years old. My birthday's in April, which means I'm entering a new decade, God willing. And I've been doing a lot of reflection of the last 3 decades and what life has been like, the ups and downs, and all of the celebrations, all of the tears. And that alone is exhausting. It's exhausting, and one of the topics I really want to tackle this year, or at least open up the dialogue on, is grief. Grief while we're working, grieving while we're working. And that doesn't just mean the loss of a person. It could be grieving work, grieving a partner, grieving anything. I mean, grief shows up in different ways. Grieving, getting older, and grieving your youth. There's so many things that we can grieve, and I think that really impacts how we work on a daily basis. And I can only speak from my experience, but what I gather is that if I'm not actively working on ways to manage my grief, which can then sprout into sadness, anxiety, forms of depression, the list goes on, right? And if I don't find ways to manage it that work for me, whether that is therapy, coaching, reading, journaling, prayer, doing a podcast, taking action on things, keeping promises to myself, and knowing what those tools are, and what those things that will help me through that process, through this grieving process, because the grief doesn't go away. That's the other thing. It's important for me to know how to manage my grief and know that it's not managing it for it to disappear. Because I still grieve things, or I get sad. I experience sadness or missing things or missing people, especially people I've lost in my life. Even friendship breakups, right? Like, let's not count those out either. There's so many things that we could that cause grief in our lives, And I'm kind of touching on this right now in this live, but I definitely will be doing either one podcast episode or a series of podcast episodes around this because I think it's a topic that doesn't get discussed that often. So, if you have some tips or topics you want to talk about surrounding the topic of grief, send them my way. If you want to possibly come on the show, message me. I think I want to really just map out how this is going to show up for not just my brand, but for the world and those that I'm intending to reach. And even then, I can't control everyone I'm going to reach. I could say this is going to go out to all the TCs, and then maybe it impacts a nurse somewhere in the middle of Georgia. You never know. So I want to make sure that I'm not overthinking it and not trying to make it the most perfect podcast, but simply, like I said, to just open up the dialogue and to get people thinking or to feel less alone. That's important too, because I've been self-employed for 6 years, and believe me, I will do everything in my power to not let go of this lifestyle that I've chosen, that I work towards. It's not easy. It's not easy. But even though I've gotten out of my work situation, my 9 to 5, I still have flashbacks of when my broker told me that I was a seat filler. And that hurts. I mean, I've learned again to manage the impact that it has in my life and how much I allow it to consume my day-to-day thinking. But there are moments like this is the time of year 6 years ago, when I was gearing up to quit. My last day was March 31st when I quit my job in 2018. It was like my last day of work. I had quit my job sooner than that, but I decided to stay another month and a half to just close up any loose ends, tighten up any loose ends. And 6 years later, there's something about it that I do get sad about, but I've now found ways to turn that into fuel, right? And I'm human. I still get angry, and there is some sort of remnants of resentment there, but it doesn't mean that I'm allowing it to be all consuming, or I didn't internalize that as my identity. Yeah, I am just a seat filler. Because I could have easily just said and been passive and not fought for myself or advocated for myself and said, "You're right. Yeah, let me just sit here in this office to make your business look good, even though it's in shambles." Yeah. So, anyway, that's what I've been up to. And I don't want to end on a negative note. I want to end on a positive note this live. So, if you're watching, thank you so much. Please hit that subscribe button. My name is Lillian Hernandez, but you can call me Lily, like the flower, because we are learning and growing together. And this is Transaction Care. My goal, one of them, is to demystify the business of real estate as told from my perspective and others around the world. It's a podcast. It's a safe place for us to exist, vent, celebrate, commune, all of the above. And I appreciate you all. This journey has been and still is. It still is. And I'm learning to let go of my own expectations of how things should feel, look, turn out, especially the outcome. I'm learning to just let go of outcomes and just do the work. And I find myself to be in better moods and to be better. I find myself more inspired when I'm taking action, when I'm keeping the promises to myself. And that's a mantra I've just had on repeat. And trust is my word of the year this year. And that's starting with trusting God, trusting myself, trusting the process, and doing the work. Those 4 things. You can even see it right there. Do the work. It's right above my TV. It's right above my TV. And then my couch is right here. So even when I'm sitting and just watching TV, I have that subtle reminder, like, is there something else I could be doing outside of just laying on this couch? If not, then I'm gonna just keep chilling. And also, rest is important too. Sleeping, lounging, doing things that are fun to you, having hobbies. I also picked up a hobby this year, which has been very helpful for my mental health. But overall, this year is all about trusting myself, trusting God, trusting the process, and coming back better than ever, but on my terms, taking my time with the podcast, taking my time with finding what it is I truly love and enjoy in life, or at least in this season of my life, and truly just being grateful each and every day. And I don't want to sound too woo woo. Believe me, your girl can really get in her feelings. But it is, it is these it is the mantras that I have to repeat to myself over and over again when I feel down and out, or it is going to, call a friend, put on my favorite movie or TV show or my favorite songs and just start dancing. Or like I said, I have hobbies now. Going to play tennis. I love tennis. And I'm glad I'm documenting this because I can flash back, to this live and say, in March 12th, 2024, I said I love tennis, and now look where I'm at with that. But again, I'm not giving any putting any high expectations for it. I'm just having fun. That's what it is. I'm just having fun, and truthfully, it has everything and nothing to do with money. I'll talk about that in future conversations, but it truly is liberating when you don't worry about money. And believe me, I'm not in the best place financially, but learning how to not worry about money, even when you need it the most, there's something freeing and liberating about that. That when I did have all of the money, or at least more money than I've ever had in my life, I couldn't fathom it. It just wasn't clicking. It came and went quick, right? I didn't appreciate it. I did amazing things with it, and it has saved future me many a times, but my mindset has just shifted and is actively shifting when it comes to money. And those are other dialogues that I definitely want to have on this show as well, or at least on YouTube. And oh, I should mention, and I'm going to close it with this, but expect on the podcast conversations about grief, navigating that while we work, money talks for sure, and just navigating mindset and money shifts in life, and especially with work, especially if you are self-employed. And finally, I'm buying a home next year. I'm claiming it, I'm putting it out there, I'm making it real because now it's on this live. Much like how I just said I love tennis, I am buying a home in 2025. That's my goal. That's what I'm putting out there. That's what I'm visualizing for myself. That's what I'm imagining for myself. That's what I'm working towards. And it's scary. It is scary. As someone who has worked in real estate for 20 years, this is also my 20-year anniversary of starting my real estate career. Wow, crazy, half my life. And I've never owned real estate. I'm still on this financial journey and financial literacy journey. And the position I'm in where I live has been very affordable, and definitely start working on myself a place, some ownership, some land. And I've also been exploring, renting elsewhere. I'm opening up the floodgates towards home ownership. And I want to document that here on YouTube and on the podcast because I think it's important to tell your story as authentically from your POV as possible. Otherwise, someone else is going to tell it for you. And for me, being a first time home buyer at 39/40 in my 40s, it's going to be work. And as I'm self-employed, navigating that, this isn't the first time I've attempted home ownership. I've been at this for the last, I'd say, since 2020. So that's 4 years. And I'll tell you guys all about every roadblock, every rejection letter or email I've gotten, and the breaks I've taken in between applying for homes, going to open houses, going to look at rentals, credit, debt, income. It's a lot. So I think a part of me managing some of those emotions and also creating, being able to find my community in this process of first time home buyers being that I do work in real estate, I have a business in real estate, and I've worked in real estate for 20 years, I think it's time to utilize a lot of those resources as well and talk about it. So thank you all. If you've made it this far in the live, you got a lot of exclusives of what is to come. But thank you so much. I appreciate you. 20 minutes in. I was hoping to just talk for 5 minutes, but 20 minutes deep. Go to transactioncare.com. That's where I house all of the information about the business, about myself, ways you could work with me one-on-one. I'm definitely going to be revamping my website as well. I didn't want to talk about that too much because I don't have plans or have it on my calendar quite yet when that's going to be done. But it definitely will be done in this first quarter. See, I just made it real. So I have 2 weeks to do this. But expect, you know what? No expectations. If you're in, you're in. If you're not, be blessed. I appreciate you. I appreciate you all for watching, for listening, for supporting, for sharing, for commenting, for liking. And this new season is going to be amazing. It's going to be a lot of fun. And let's do this. Again, transactioncare.com, and subscribe. I need more subscribers. We're almost at 1,000. So if you are a part of that journey, thank you so much. We are almost at 1,000. I need to hit 1,000 before my birthday. So stay tuned, more content. Let's do this. Let's have some fun. I'm giving you the keys. There are no gatekeepers here. Care for yourself, care for your wealth. Your time is worth it. Let's coordinate. Talk soon.